Coming up in this episode...
This is not a simplistic goodies versus baddies movie.
A lot of people listening will be asking, what was the theme? What was the point of this movie? What does it mean?
I think this will come to be regarded as a classic movie, actually.
Underappreciated by critics and audiences too.
Basically, the moral of the story is capitalism wins.
For critics, this movie cuts a little closer to the bone.
And so I think the point he's making seems to be that he needed to make a safer movie than this. And I really can't agree with that, because I think this is not a safe time in America.
Welcome back to the Historical Movies Podcast. My name is Ross, I'm an editor, and I'm joined by my brother Bryce, Professor of Modern World History at Liverpool Hope University and historical scriptwriter. Bryce, firstly, I've been introducing you wrong for like a year. Professor of Modern World History, I always forget the world. Anyway, how are you doing?
Good, yes.
And in today's episode, we're looking at Eddington, set during May 2020. In the fictional town of Eddington, New Mexico, Sheriff Joe Cross, Joaquin Phoenix, opposes Mayor Ted Garcia's, Pedro Pascal's, pro-mask agenda and runs against him for office. Rivalry turns into conspiracy, violence and betrayal, exposing societal fractures through a surreal, satirical and neo-Western style film. Bryce, there's so much to get through in this movie. It's one of those movies when as soon as I finished watching it, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I was thinking about it all night, and I was thinking about it in bed. And when I got up the next morning, I was thinking about it when I got up, and I was thinking, what does that mean? What does this scene mean? And I was trying to fit everything together in a sort of coherent narrative, which is, what we do when we watch films. We have a nice beginning, middle, and end. Sure, we have that in this movie. But some critics have called this tonal misdirection, or maybe an unfocused narrative. But it seems to me that it's obviously how this film is made. So do you think this movie is purposely bewildering? That there's so many overlapping plot issues and people see things from so many different points of view that you're supposed to feel a little bit confused, basically, when you see this movie? Yeah, because a lot of people listening will be asking, what was the theme? What was the point of this movie? What does it mean? And we'll get onto that. We'll hammer down what we think.
Well, the point of feeling unsettled and something that sticks with you is typical of Ari Aster's movies. I haven't seen the one that came before this, Beau is Afraid, which again divided critics quite sharply, but certainly his hits. Hereditary is deeply unsettling, really quite unpleasant movie, actually, horror movie. But again, you can't stop thinking about it. And similarly, Midsommar, in 2019, which was a real breakthrough for him. Again, it's very dark and unsettling, but you can't stop thinking about it. And the same must be said for this movie. What is the point of this movie? Well, I would say that it's a satire on a really interesting historical moment in America right now. And like I say, people might be asking why we're looking at this on a historical movies pod. Well, it is a piece of a really important piece of contemporary history. 5 years ago, that juncture between COVID, the dying embers of Trump 1, conspiracy theories, Me Too, Black Lives Matter. And, we should say we're recording this today following the shooting of Charlie Kirk. And it does feel that there's a lot afoot in America in terms of this historical moment. Which is what this is trying to capture in a very jarring and I think quite multi-layered and complex and quite haunting way.
Time for a very short interruption. It's Ross here. Thanks very much for listening on YouTube. Don't forget to check out all of our other episodes, and we'd love to hear from you, so leave us a comment. And any sharing or liking or subscribing you can do would really help the podcast. So thanks a lot. Yeah, I think my point would be that the characters are sort of purposefully, they seem to be seeing things from different points of view. There's a whole thing about Lou's father who clearly sexually assaulted her, but the mum blames Ted. And Louise likes this Vernon Park guy, and Joe obviously thinks he's just, some cult leader. And so everyone's seeing things from different points of view. One thing I wanted to ask you, though, which I find fascinating, is will this movie be seen differently in the future. So you've said this film has met a sort of mixed critical response. And I'm thinking, will it be seen in the future now? We'll sort of forget all of the, maybe let's say, shortcomings about the focus of the narrative. And it will be like, wow, that's a really good zeitgeist. It perfectly captures the zeitgeist and this point where sort of COVID broke everything. So do you think the reason why this movie is underappreciated by critics and maybe audiences too, is because we need a little bit more time to sort of, so it's a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more, we can understand what this historic moment we're living through means.
I think this will come to be regarded as a classic movie, actually. And as you say, as a movie that captures the zeitgeist in America at this historical period really well. Now, I think one thing that some critics are driving at is, well, actually, I haven't heard this as a criticism. What criticism I would have of it is that in attempting to capture this really important historical juncture, it's cramming in so many things. Like, so it's, tick Black Lives Matter, tick COVID, tick conspiracy theories, tick crisis of masculinity, etc., etc. You name it. And that reminded me actually of the great thriller writer John Buchan, who wrote the 39 Steps, etc. John Buchan once said that if you're writing historical fiction, you shouldn't be able to smell the oil of the lamp. What does he mean by that? He meant that, in other words, the weakness of a lot of historical fiction, and the same goes for historical movies, is that it's so well researched and there's so much history to cram in that it can compromise the story. And, the meticulousness of the sort of accuracy of the historical detail. And that's a bit of a danger here because there's so many themes trying to be crammed in here. However, I would say that is mitigated by its fairly long running time. And I don't sort of agree with some of the criticisms around the choppiness of the narrative. I think cinematography is great. I've listened to Mark Kermode. I thought he gave a really unfair review of this.
Mark Kermode.
Kermode.
You're not allowed to say Mark Kermode. You have to say Kermode, Bryce.
Do I? Well, he said that this was smug and boring.
Yeah, well, just to come back on that point, he said that you're allowed. He said you're allowed as a director one indulgence, and then you should get back on track. And he said that you mentioned Ari Aster's previous movies. He said Beau is Afraid was the indulgence, which bombed at the box office, made a fifth of its budget. The other two that came previously, Hereditary and Midsommar, tripled, quadrupled their budget, so much more successful. He's saying,
yeah, but he's speaking as a film nerd.
Yes, I know, but it seemed to be an odd take for me from him, because he's basically saying, as a director, you're allowed to do one crazy film, and then you should basically make what the market wants.
Yeah, I find it a really, really odd criticism. Kermode is a film nerd, obviously, and so perhaps inevitably he's holding it up to Beau is Afraid. Well, I haven't seen Beau is Afraid. It seems a really odd yardstick to be just judging this against Beau is Afraid and saying that you can't have two divisive movies in a row. Well, for those of us who aren't uber film nerds, well, I haven't seen Beau is Afraid. I would just view every film I watch pretty much on its own terms, if possible. And so I think the point he's making, it seems to be that he needed to make a safer movie than this. And I really can't agree with that, because I think this is not a safe time in America. It's a very febrile and dangerous and sort of toxic time. And I think in trying to capture that and satirize that, some of the dark comedy doesn't really work. But I do, to come back to your original point, I think in given time, this will be regarded as a bit of a classic, which was I was so keen that we did it. And I know it's a bit unusual that we picked such a, topic which is just so recent, but it is, if you think back 5 years, COVID, etc., it was mad, and it was a really significant historical period. And so I wonder, is this the first of the great COVID movies?
I just wanted to come back on your point. So if we're talking to people listening to this in the future, and maybe many years in the future, and we'll be thinking whether this has become regarded as a classic. I just wonder, from a stylistic point, will it be regarded as a classic? Because, I mean, obviously, the movies that move into that kind of pantheon of top movies tend to not only be brilliantly thematically, but also in terms of the way that they're created. And I just have a few problems with this movie in its tone in some parts, particularly with the Antifa Airlines, when the Antifa people fly in on the Learjet, and then at the end where this movie goes absolutely batshit crazy for the last 20 minutes before we get that epilogue. And I felt tonally, I couldn't quite understand. This is just an example of where I think the movie's got the tone. For me, it was kind of off a bit. I couldn't quite understand whether he's basically pushing the envelope so far it's supposed to be ludicrous and it's supposed to be funny or darkly comedic or just ridiculous, or whether there was a point he was trying to make, or whether it was just, it wasn't clear. It didn't quite hit the resonance with me that a lot of the rest of the film did. So that was one point I wanted to bring up.
Well, I mean, on that, yeah, that's really bizarre bit of the movie, the Antifa private jet. I mean, I'm sure that's the kind of image of Antifa Donald Trump and the MAGA crowd would like us to believe.
Yeah.
Especially, like I say, look, we can't divorce ourselves from the fact we're just recording this in the aftermath of a major political assassination in the United States of a conservative figure, which, has a lot of resonance here. I mean, doing press ups in the private jet, it is ridiculous. But I tell you what it does. It doesn't quicken the pace. Some of the criticisms of this have been, the pacing is a bit slow, etc.
I think it's just a bit inconsistent. That's what I found with the pacing.
Well, I mean, I think it really picks up though in the, if you like, the third act, which is like brilliant. Even action sequences, which are absolutely breathtaking, from the explosion caused by the Antifa lads to the Native American cop who sort of gets his leg blown off, to even the bit where he falls through the roof, Joaquin Phoenix.
Great. It's my favorite shot.
Brilliant, actually, amazing.
Really,
believable action scenes.
It looks like he really did fall through the roof. But I told you, the end of this in style reminded me a bit of, I was just thinking of a movie which wasn't critically well received at the time and then has gone on to become a much more well-renowned cult classic. It reminded me of the end of American Psycho, which I absolutely adore as a movie. But right at the end of that, the tone when basically I think he shoots something and explodes, and the ATM machine talks to him, Patrick Bateman in American Psycho. And the tone of that it's quite clearly supposed to be like, okay, is he hallucinating? Is this stuff really happening? Whereas the tone in this movie, I didn't get that. And I've just found it, the ending, I wanted to come back to the ending, that we escalate so rapidly out of control. I mean, maybe that's the whole point of what the movie is saying. But we get this crazy terrorist plot. We get this blown out of all proportion crosstown shootout. He's stabbed in the head. Becomes like disabled in the genre in the same style as many ways as the legendary Anthony Hopkins and Legends of the Fall. Am happy. He basically just goes a bit cross-eyed. And then this Brian guy who saves him becomes a right-wing fanboy, and he was previously left-wing. And then this data center is built. I want to come back to the data center. But the ending is just so bananas in this movie. I couldn't quite
I think it's really
get there
good.
with it.
I think it's a really good ending, because the ending is basically, the moral of the story is capitalism wins. In America, capitalism wins, because you had his whole ill-judged mayoral campaign. You had the pro and anti data center stuff. The woman in the Mexican restaurant has done her homework on the data center, its use of water. Again, tick, environmental theme. Okay, again, trying to cram too much in, perhaps. A lot of the mayoral race has centered, even before he takes part in it, on the data center. But what happens in the end? Well, he is elected as a hero. He's a vegetable. The mother-in-law, who previously, where's your fight? You've been bought. Well, she's buyable as well, clearly, because the data center is built and they let her open it and spiel off all her nonsense about anti-vax and the New World Order, but it's still been built and they get a new house in return. Thanks very much. So what's really changed between herself and the deceased Hispanic guy? Capitalism wins. And for me, that's a really good ending. And that is the moral of the story here.
That he's disabled. He can't do anything about all these policies which he didn't agree with, and now he's being held up. Not only doesn't agree with them, he's now the poster boy for this, due to these dark forces behind. I wanted to come back to, usually for these podcasts, I love doing a little bit of diving in historically, finding out different bits of information about the history or how accurate it is, blah, blah, blah. We know this is all fictional. It's a fictional town. It's a fictional story. But there is a little nugget of historical truth in here, Bryce. And that's the name of the company that builds the data center is called SolidGoldMagikarp. This bizarre name. Now, that is actually a real thing in AI programming. So I'll try and summarize this, as I found this very confusing. But the name of the data center, SolidGoldMagikarp, refers to a phenomenon in AI where certain prompts, like SolidGoldMagikarp, exhibit unusual and often nonsensical behavior. I should mention this was a prompt which caused ChatGPT to give out bizarre responses. So SolidGoldMagikarp is a known one that gives out bizarre or gave out bizarre responses. So what happens is the AI is trained on words, and a good example of this is ChatGPT was unable apparently to tell you the number of R's in the word strawberry. It could work out that there was one at the beginning, and then it couldn't work out how many were at the end because it just saw both of those R's as one icon. They're called tokens, one thing it has to read to process.
So this is exploiting the vulnerability of AI.
No, it seemed to me that the point is that SolidGoldMagikarp, which let's not forget, the first and last things we see in this movie is the data center.
Well, the tramp
bookends.
Yeah,
but he's next to where it's going to be built.
Yeah.
And that is a broken token which breaks an AI prompt. Is there an analogy there with COVID being the thing that kind of tipped us into a completely different world and broke society? Now, there's obviously a lot more things that this film doesn't explore which broke society. So is that something as well, that this movie is basically at a shifting point there? Society before and after COVID, basically. Have I lost you with all the AI speak? I'm not sure if I've explained that clearly. I didn't really. Yeah, I have, but it's very complicated. I don't really understand it myself. But my point is, that is the only thing in here that's based on a historical point. That's my point. Other than the theme of the movie.
Well, I think there's loads that's based on historical points.
I mean, a specific thing. Sorry, a specific, historical thing that happened.
COVID testing. Trump. I read a review where somebody was saying that Trump is absent from this. He's not. You do see Trump in one of the TikTok feeds.
Yeah.
So I think it is quite historically situated. Yeah, I didn't get that. Didn't realize it. I'm just reading now, live scrolling through a Reddit.
Jamie, pull up SolidGoldMagikarp, and we'll just read out the Wikipedia article very slowly for our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose. Yeah, what else would it be called? Evil Corp. One could say the tendency to cram in a bit too much. So that's another one, isn't it? AI, tick. In terms of being a state of the nation piece and getting in every single theme we can, including the environmental theme, the use of water, AI, etc. That's the main criticism for me. Then again, like I said, 2.5 hours provides enough padding for me to sort of get over those qualms.
I just want to come back to a point that includes the social media stuff about this movie. A criticism could be that it's ignoring, let's say, macroeconomic or political themes, and it's kind of focused in on the small town. But is that the point of the movie? Is the point of the movie is that we're actually focusing on the wrong things? I've got a quote here from the director. In an interview with MovieWeb, he said, "I think social media is a tool, and I think it's being harnessed. And I think in a lot of ways, we're being distracted by these ideological battles, while big power operates above us and is changing us, changing the world." So my initial reading of this movie, where I'm thinking like, yeah, but he's missing out all this stuff, all these macro political big swings of history. Maybe that's the point of the movie. He's saying we're focusing on all this crap that we're being fed by social media, and we're missing the bigger picture.
Yeah, I think that is the point. That's the point I got from the movie. And, I sense that some of the disdain for this movie, I sense, is because people think that its messages is in some ways right wing, because in some ways you can't help rooting for the hero anti-hero of Joaquin Phoenix's character.
Yeah.
Even though he's a profoundly corrupt and stupid man, and like a lot of the portrayal of Black Lives Matter, again, really important historical juncture. The George Floyd thing there, again, that's a big historical moment which is dealt with there. They're on the right side of history in many ways, but they're also portrayed as a bunch of doofuses. This is not a simplistic goodies versus baddies movie. The racist cops are endearing in some ways. The Black Lives Matter, who you'd naturally identify with, are a bunch of idiots in many ways. I would like to denounce my whiteness and all the rest kind of stuff, coming from a great place, but it just come across as a complete idiot. And I think for some people that was too much, in the sense that they're probably looking for, if they're looking, maybe some people wanted a more didactic state of the nation, which was condemnatory of the populist right, in the lines of Black Klansman at the end, where Spike Lee links it to that horrific attack by the right wing on anti-racist campaigners around this sort of time. I think this is a much better movie than that. It's not going to give you didactic, simplistic, goody versus baddie stuff. There's shades of grey in everyone here. Some of the goodies per se are really quite stupid, as are some of the baddies, but they also have their virtues and their decencies. I think for me that's one of the. I can see, like, what I'm trying to get at here. I can see why the Guardian didn't like it.
So it would have been different if Ken Loach had directed it.
Yeah,
in a nutshell.
It would have been, but are we not a bit tired of that kind of preachy? It has its place, but this is a much more kind of like nuanced kind of piece, isn't it? You don't, you're not rooting for Joaquin Phoenix's character. He is. A baddie, but at the same time, you are at junction.
Yeah, I felt sort of voyeuristically wanting to see, okay, where's this going to go? I wasn't really. The film didn't give me enough to support him, and it didn't give me enough to be against him. I think that was the point. I think that's what the director intended. I want to come back to your point about the fact that we often talk on, well, almost every movie we do, especially the Hollywood ones, have to paint a black and white good versus evil to get the contrast between the heroes and the villains. This movie doesn't fit into that. Is there also a thing that this movie cuts a little close to the bone for critics? I think that's a good thing that critics didn't really get on board with this, because there's a lot of stuff that's quite raw, and it will take a while for people to process it and be able to watch something where it's being parodied, I thought.
Yeah, I think some critics are wanting I think more of a kind of left-leaning moral to emerge. So, I mean, I don't want to preempt Sude's Corner, but I think that if you read the Peter Bradshaw review in The Guardian...
I can't wait for it. I can't wait. Here with bated breath, Bryce. What a Bradshaw.
We'll get to that. And
okay.
I always reserve him for Sude's Corner, but he's essentially driving at the point that he wants like a sort of he basically wants an anti-Trumpian moral to emerge. Now, I think in some ways that is the moral. It's certainly not saying, oh, isn't the president great? It's reflecting on the chaos of, we're living, we said the chaos of Trump 1, we're living, it's the chaos of Trump 2. I'm going to be very clear. I think a lot of the problems within American society derive from the commander-in-chief currently. But, do we really want to be slapped around the face and knocked on the head and said, well, there you go. Isn't Trump bad, and look at all the bad things he's produced? Well, no, it's a lot. What Aster's getting at here is, in the age of the iPhone, things are a lot more sort of multi-layers.
Like AI itself, Bryce, we've all been trained on Hollywood movies where we need a goodie and a baddie. So we need to watch movies that are a bit more grey, perhaps. I do want to say one thing, though. I could sit and discuss this movie. Could discuss all the things with you endlessly and say, isn't that clever? He's done that, but is it saying something, or is he saying something else here, or what? For example, I've written down a list of questions I had, like, what's the significance of the data center? I think we've answered that. Why does he shoot the homeless guy? Is it just because he flips and he's pissed off? Why does he get himself tested for COVID? Why are Antifa appearing on a Learjet? My point is that you could basically, it's one of those movies that I have the feeling that it could almost get away with anything, endless theories. Because it covers so much.
Because it's such a hard-hitting satire, you mean? Or
no, because it's such an oddball movie. Well, it's a different kind of movie, and you could say, well, the director was very cleverly doing X, Y, or Z in this scene because it's not a usual inverted commas movie.
Well, the only unbelievable bits from it. The only unbelievable bit is the financial backing, Learjet, and the incredible degree of organization attached to Antifa. That's the only thing. And but again, that may be like sending up the way that Antifa is represented. I mean, for me, Antifa is less a sort of well-financed and well-drilled bunch of like mercenary Commandos, it's more of a sort of organic and at times patchy,
Of course it is, yeah.
and sort of spotty and slightly student flag waving phenomenon. And
Well,
so,
that's my interpretation of it, yeah.
but that's the only bit that for me that's unbelievable. He shoots the bomb,
Yeah.
because the guy is a delinquent and he is a pain in the arse. I think that's quite believable because that comes after he's been humiliated at the launch for your man.
Yeah.
He just loses it. But all these anxieties at the time, of course, I think captures the COVID anxiety really well. And so he's sort of basically denying COVID, and then of course he's got it. Yeah, he would go and get himself tested. I mean, you think he's going to die of a combination of asthma and COVID, don't you?
Yeah, that's actually what I thought was going to happen. You know, it would all come to a close, nice little bow on it, and he dies asthmatically of COVID. You know, that would have been the sort of morality tale. You know, he's just been banging on about
Serves
you
you
shouldn't
right.
have to be
Yeah.
yeah. I always thought that the homeless guy character, the character of the homeless guy, always felt to me like it was these characters that you get in films that kind of stalk the land. It's kind of a mirror on everyone's soul. It's kind of the unpalatable truth that is in front of you. That's what his character appears to be to me.
Well,
the sickness in society is manifest in this guy, which the sheriff just loses his shit with and shoots.
I read it more as I've not been to New Mexico, but having been to a lot of smallish American towns similar to this, I think it's actually again a case of, you know, again tick big themes. It's the drug crisis. The guy is clearly a psychotic, presumably from the effects of methamphetamine or something like that. He's basically a meth head, and it's something you find in every American small town. These kind of incoherent, rambling bombs. Of course, you find it around the world, but I think it's very noticeable in America, who have sort of addled their brains, I think, largely off meth. I think a lot of it's to do with meth. That's how I read that character. It's another sort of state of the nation theme. Like I said, I didn't find it unusual when he killed him because, number one, your man is, like I say, he's a pain in the arse. He's a social delinquent. But also remember the video is released of him manhandling
Yeah.
the Trump,
Yeah.
the police brutality, again, another big theme there. So he has the sort of motive, if you like.
Just wanted to ask you one final question before we get onto our venerable list of questions.
Yeah.
And this movie got me thinking about COVID and the role of the state and the breakdown in society and all that kind of stuff. And I just want to think about this broadly. The one historical point that came to my mind when I'm thinking about the role of the state and lockdowns and that state control and so on would be something like World War II. And I just wanted to get your opinion as a history professor. For example, in 20, 30 years' time, we may be told that the COVID crisis was this great big problem, but we all got together and we all got through it. A bit like we're all told these days that the World War II, everyone in Britain got together and they got through it. They don't mention the black market and they don't mention resistance against it and all that. It's way more nuanced than a nation being brought together by one specific thing. So I just want to ask you, is this movie a truer representation of great historical events because it's so skittish? That's the first word that comes to my mind, because it covers so many different things. Do you get the analogy I'm trying to draw there?
Yeah, I think I would agree because it's skittish, it's unpredictable, as are human beings. You know, the grand macro themes you're discussing are one thing, but the unpredictability, the emotions and anxiety of the individual are quite another. And COVID was a profoundly weird period. To think back on it now, at that time, I would have been absolutely with the mayor insisting everybody wears masks. As it wound on, the degree of state interventionism became, frankly, quite bizarre, and probably the highest watermark of state interventionism ever in any, you know, in most countries that most countries have witnessed, like you say, since World War II, and at times was like frankly peculiar. And I think another good thing that this captures, which I believe his previous movie captured, is like anxiety. The anxiety. I mean, COVID was a profoundly anxious period for so many people. I remember, you know, just waiting for the government stats every day of how many people had died, and I mean, I think this captures that anxiety on a personal level really well. Like nearly all the characters are kind of nervous wrecks in one way or another.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a very true movie, I think, in that regard.
Yeah, I remember at the time of COVID, people were asking the government, give us more statistics. We want to know the statistics day by day by day.
Yeah.
And I remember them being a little bit surprised. Oh, you want us to do this daily, this brief, right when it was kicking off. Yeah, this movie kind of took me back down memory lane, with the masks, the arrows on the floor of the supermarket, Black Lives Matter. The fact that another great thing, another great zeitgeist thing is that Deputy Bitcoin, I like to call him, the sheriff's deputy who's listening to Bitcoin podcasts. He's a Bitcoin bro. The only thing,
he's
Bryce,
great, actually. He's a great character.
yeah, he is good. The only thing that's missing is Joe Wick's workouts for people who suffered through COVID in Britain. So should we get on to our list of questions, Bryce?
Yes.
Is this too long or too short or just right?
It's just right because, like I say, it's cramming in so many big themes. The danger of you shouldn't be able to smell the oil of the lamp, i.e., in terms of all the themes being crammed in. In that sense, by virtue of that, it can only be about 2.5 hours. And I really enjoy, and I know some people found it slow and boring, but I think that is justified by the brilliant pace change towards the end. And I think I found that in his Midsommar, his Swedish movie, which then
Yes.
really accelerates at the end. And I think, again, because he's cramming so much in terms of, the zeitgeist, as you put it, it has to be about 2.5 hours long. If it was any shorter, we'd just be going, oh, here's another reference to the environment or Bitcoin or Trump or, you know what I mean? We'd be sort of counting them by numbers. Whereas at 2.5 hours, I think he probably gets away with it.
So he's hit the balance, because I know it's one of your pet peeves when you see they have to insert historical facts to give you a feeling of what time we're in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, a young corporal in the trenches by the name of Hitler, you say? But I do know that you like 90, like football matches, like 90 minutes. So what about yourself?
Yeah, I found it too long, and I find the pacing. I don't think it's well done. I think I understand, but then again, we did mention briefly on another podcast. You're not always supposed to purely enjoy movies. Sometimes the experience is more than just you go there and think, "Oh, that was a good experience."
It's a hard watch.
Yeah, this is exactly a hard watch. So I find it very difficult in many ways criticizing it because a lot of the criticisms we have on this podcast are for conventional movies, and this is not a conventional movie. And so, is it too long? Yeah, I just thought that the pacing was erratic, and I think it could have been a bit better. And it's a little bit long, just a little bit. De Niro would say. Who's your favorite character then? Are you going for Deputy Bitcoin or are you going for Joe Cross? Thank you, super duper very much.
I think Joaquin Phoenix should win an Oscar for this, but in terms of performances. But I do think in terms of there's some really good characters which again capture the zeitgeist, especially the guru character who's typical of our sort of modern guru, internet influencer kind of guru.
Vernon Jefferson Peake.
Yes, brilliantly named as well. But yeah, I do like the deputy because he's such a it's a great deputy role, isn't it? The sort of the loyal lieutenant, and of course he's the one when they stitch up the poor their colleague, the black guy. Of course he's the one saying, "Well, look, think about it. Is he with us or is he against us?" Of course, he's always been the most loyal and clean cop in the whole thing. But so I think Deputy Bitcoin, as you've put him there, I've forgotten the actor's name and indeed the character's name. But
Michael Ward, played by Michael Cook.
Michael Ward, if you're trying to capture what's going on in America right now / 5 years ago at a historical juncture, he probably encapsulates most of those themes the best. And so I'll probably choose him, yeah.
Well, one thing I wanted to talk about there is that the Officer Butterfly Jimenez is his name, the Native American that comes in from the next county across. The director said, if you notice in this movie, they ignore him. And that's done purposefully as the Native American people are ignored in America. So that's something I wanted to bring back.
Outright racism.
Yeah, he's just constantly pushed out, basically.
And of course, and I think it's... and then he gets this, beautiful mural, which is just a bit of a token. But again, did you notice when Joaquin Phoenix falls through the roof, it's into
Geronimo,
a Native American museum? Yeah, Geronimo. So a lot of symbolism again, about and obviously references, quite rightly, amongst the left-wing Egypts to the stolen land.
Yeah, yes, I say it's Geronimo. I only read that because someone had written a very poor piece of trivia online saying that when he falls through, he lands on a Geronimo exhibit.
He does, yeah.
Coincidentally, Geronimo is a word shouted often when you're
Geronimo!
exiting a plane or
Yeah,
jumping off something.
yeah.
I think
Geronimo!
missing the point, but somewhat. I actually think Pedro Pascal, who's not in it a huge amount, probably because he's in so many other films and things, but I think he did quite a good job. I don't know, his character just is kind of bubbling away under the surface, and you think this guy's a real asshole, but there's nothing to confirm that. But I would give it to Joaquin
The
Phoenix. I think he's
cheesy
great.
election campaign video kind of confirmed that he's
Yeah,
an asshole, doesn't it?
exactly. Yeah. What was your favorite scene, Bryce? Again, this is a difficult question for me to answer.
Oh, I need to chew on that for a second. How about yourself?
Well, I do like the mayoral slap
Yeah,
when
that is
he
very
get
good. The
when
double
he
slap.
goes when he yes, and it's to the soundtrack of Katy Perry's Fireworks. Apparently, they tried to get Empire State of Mind by Jay-Z, but they couldn't secure the rights. That's true. I haven't made that up. Hang on.
How about that?
Yep, that's true. But no, I think that's possibly my favorite scene. Basically, when he gets slapped twice and then he snaps
Good
that
point.
turning point in the middle.
Good point.
I had problems.
It
Yeah, go on.
shows the ridiculousness of both men, both
Yeah,
clearly undergoing some form of pathetic midlife crisis,
yeah,
and these quite pretty hard but still fairly girly double slap to
yeah,
to
yeah.
the
That's
notes of
but
Katy Perry.
yeah. There are some great moments in this movie where I think the direction and the tone and it is absolutely on point. And I think that scene is probably my favorite because that's exactly what I thought. It's actually perfectly shows you both of those men's characters,
Yeah.
and no one says anything.
And how pathetic they are, and everyone's silent. And as Joaquin Phoenix's character walks out, he sort of stumbles and walks into the pinata on the
Yeah,
tree. There's quite.
yeah,
I think that people said this film, there wasn't enough darkly comic moments. I think if you on a second watching, you'd probably giggle quite a lot more. There's quite a
yeah,
few moments like that where he just walks straight into the pinata, whether it was planned or not. It's actually really funny with his
yeah. I wonder.
his stupid car, cop car bedecked with his campaign
Amazing,
slogans, all of
amazing.
which are sort of grammatically inaccurate and misspelt as well. I don't know if you met, if you,
Yeah, yeah. You're being manipulated.
yeah,
YOUR.
yeah.
Well, I would ask which part should Mel Gibson, Daniel Day Lewis, or Marlon Brando have played, but maybe we'll just move on to
Well,
what would Brian Clough. Sorry, go on.
I think that that's a bit of a redundant question. However, there's a point at this movie, I think, during the final kind of Rambo-esque scenes where Joaquin Phoenix looks nothing more like nothing more than Mel Gibson at one stage. The slightly older Mel, the sort of grizzled Mel.
Those last scenes, I have problems with
Why?
because as you just said perfectly, this in the Rambo scene, I don't know what a Rambo scene is doing in this movie.
It needs it because, like you say, that we've been waiting for this. This is what we've been waiting for. When he goes in and comes out with his ridiculous gun out of the the gun shop, and then all hell breaks loose. It needs it because we've been waiting patiently for a bit of that.
This doesn't seem right to me. Anyway, Cluffy, Bryce, what would Cluffy say?
Well, hang on, I just got to come back to you on the tonal point. It's a western. You need a shootout at the end.
Yeah, I know, but it goes bananas.
What would Cluffy say? Go on. What would Cluffy say?
I don't know. Calm down, young man. Best companion film, Bryce. I've got nothing for this.
I'm just well. I
I
think
haven't looked anything up.
I think it's so far the seminal COVID movie. So I'm just trying to think of what it's been. I think it was compared to what was that movie Tor, which came out? Was it Tar? I read a review, but then I haven't seen that movie. Yeah, trying to capture this whole moment in America, like I say, the end of Black Klansman, although Black Klansman's set in the 70s, which kind of discusses this. I'm just trying to think. There must be other zeitgeisty pieces.
The reason I'm being quiet is because I've Googled it and it's not gone well. List of films impacted. Okay, COVID movies. Anyway, let's not do live Googling. So let's move on. I haven't got any, maybe his other films. It always interests me when a director is very successful in horror and then moves onto different genres.
Well, I think you can see that at the end, especially when
the violence.
people are blown up, etc. I mean, like I say, the I've forgotten the name of it now. The horror movie that he did, which was box office.
Midsommar, Hereditary.
No, before that, the one before that, before
Is it
Midsommar.
not called Hereditary?
Hereditary, yeah,
Hereditary.
that is, it's so unpleasant at times that you can barely even watch it. You know, it's really, there's a decapitation scene of a young girl in that movie, which I almost kind of said I can't watch this anymore.
Yeah.
And I think those horrific flashes, you get them certainly towards the end here.
What are we putting in our Hall of Fame, Bryce? I've got one.
Go on.
The Joe Cross Election Mobile,
Yes.
complete with stars and stripes, tassels, and misspelt slogans such as "You're being manipulated."
I really should know this, but I know in America there's a very different system when it comes to local government. However, surely it's inadmissible for somebody to bedeck the police car.
Yeah. Well, this is another point. This is another point in this movie that, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. I know he basically gets his deputies to become his campaign people,
Yeah.
but also how things escalate quickly. And there's no, okay, let's say it's during all the violence and, everyone's busy, whatever, but the feds are nowhere to be seen. There's no, they're just left to their own devices.
They
and
are
they send one
at the end.
Yeah, at the very end, but they send one deputy from the county next door, and that's the only other bit of oversight that we have.
Yeah,
this movie is completely devoid of the macro.
Endearingly small town. Yeah, but again, they do get involved at the end. And the macro's there through all the viral TikToks everybody's watching.
Yeah. What would happen in a sequel?
The full-blown American Civil War. What's that like crazy movie where
Isn't it called Civil War?
Other? No, everyone gets to kill each other for one night.
The Purge.
The Purge, yeah, that kind of thing. Can I do a Sude's Corner?
Please.
Peter Bradshaw, my favourite of the Sude's Corner, claims Trump is oddly unmentioned in all the news programmes and TikToks. Fake news, because because he does appear.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I saw it as well. Yeah,
but it just doesn't. It's not rammed down your throat, and this brings me back to the point of it doesn't portray a simplistic goodies, i.e., BLM versus baddies, racist cops narrative. It's not that simple.
Yeah.
You're still rooting for Joe Cross in parts. I actually, in retort to Peter Bradshaw, who I think again it's really just missed the point here. Go to the Empire review of it, and I quote, Joe Cross is a deeply misguided man, but a man concerned about human dignity, and that's the point there. Now, I have a final point which I wanted to ask you. Knowing you're an aficionado of westerns, Aster himself has described this quote as a western, but the guns are phones. Would you agree with that? Because there's also lots of many guns in the third act.
Well, I have to correct you there. I'm an aficionado of. I haven't seen that many westerns. I like spaghetti westerns. I don't know about the American old school westerns. I can't really. The phones are guns. Yep. Sorry, the guns are phones.
Yep.
Well, I'm having a hard time understanding that because I think the whole concept of the fact that the modern data-driven world, it plays such an important role in this movie. It's obvious people are on their phones. And actually, I was watching this movie and I was thinking, oh God, that's right. That's how people behave. They're constantly on their phones. They're on phones in their bed. They're not talking to their partner because they're on their phone. And so, that's the point for me is that they're not these, okay, you can maybe make an analogy that they're powerful weapons or something. But I think it's more of this, the point for me with the digital stuff in this and phones is that, that thing that people say everyone's more connected, but everything's more fragmented. And people are just not understanding each other, and people have got different views of the same things, and that's helped by the phones and social media and the digital world in which we live. So that's I don't really get the analogy.
I suppose what he's driving at is in the westerns, the gun makes the law, and here is almost the phone.
Yeah, but in this movie, the gun also makes law because he goes around killing people in the second half.
Absolutely, yeah, which is like tremendously enjoyable at the end.
Pedant's Corner, Bryce, factual error.
Okay.
At the beginning of the film, when Joe is watching a YouTube video on his phone, the dislike count is missing and the Shorts remix button is visible. Dislike counts were removed. Both features weren't globally launched until 2021, a full year after this movie is set.
Oh, dear.
And another one that someone has written online, Contrary to popular movie makers' belief, belt-fed machine guns are not in the typical inventory of gun stores.
Yeah, but they might have been in that gun store, Knobend.
I think missing the point massively. So we said this kind of divided opinion, this movie. It's 6.7 on IMDb, 69% on Rotten Tomatoes, 65% audiences on Rotten Tomatoes. What did you make of it, Bryce? What are you giving it out of 10?
I totally
Sum it up for us.
What will become seen as a classic. I don't care about it relative to his other movies. I think it's a brilliant state of the nation piece without a moralizing, didactic tone, without goodies and baddies. It's subtle, it's darkly comic, and it's very successfully satirical, almost ridiculously at times, of course, but I think he pulls it back despite the sort of overblown moments which betray his kind of horror background. So for me, for a very interesting moment in American history, which I think is probably going on as we speak, I suppose, contemporary history of America, this is a brilliant movie. And for that reason, I'm going to go high.
Oh,
I'm going to give it a 9.
Wow. This become the second time that I'll give it a lower score than you. Only ever the second time.
Wow.
I've given it a 7.5.
Right.
And I've given it 7.5 in the course of recording this podcast with you, because usually I go through and write before we come on and my score, but I left it blank. And so after our discussion, I've given it 7.5. And while I would agree with everything that you've said, my counter would be, I don't think this will be seen as a classic in terms of filmmaking. It may be a classic in terms of themes, but for me, the pacing, the tone, some of the direction, some of the way that the scenes are put together and edited, for me, in my very humble opinion, does not make it a classic. I just think it misses a few beats, a few things tonally, which I've come onto. I think the end is way too over the top. I just couldn't get on board with it. I come back to what you said. Actually, any movie that makes you feel like this has achieved. And any movie that makes you think about it when you go to bed, when you wake up in the morning and think, what were they trying to say? And think, okay, that was a real experience. You don't have to necessarily enjoy every minute of it. In fact, it's better if you don't. But every movie that gives you an authentic experience like that deserves applause. So, Bryce, next time, thank you very much for joining me. Next time, we'll do something a bit older than 5 years ago, but it was absolutely brilliant. Very interesting to get a kind of, historiography or something, I don't know, a bit more modern kind of history to go through. If you're listening on YouTube, one thing you can do for free, which massively helps us talking about AI and algorithms, is leave us a like, a subscribe, and a comment would really help. And if you are so inclined, you could leave us a 5-star review if you're listening to this on a podcast platform. Because Bryce, because of SolidGoldMagikarp and the data centers, we need to beat the AI algorithms. So don't be a bad token. Leave us a good review. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Historical Movies Podcast. That's it for this episode of the Historical Movies Podcast. Don't forget to leave us a review on your chosen podcast platform. Spotify and Apple Podcasts make a huge difference to the algorithm. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to leave a comment or a like or subscribe. Thanks very much for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.